Hello everyone, this is topic 23, the expression of simultaneity, anteriority and posteriority. Introduction. An important forerunner of communicative language teaching was the Notional Functional syllabus, aimed towards the development of students' notional functional competence. It was first suggested by Wilkins in the UK in the 70s, and its distinguishing characteristic is its attention to functions and notion as the organizing elements of the foreign language curriculum. The Council of Europe incorporated notional competence to facilitate the teaching of European languages, and so did the official curriculum for official language schools. Built on this proposal, syllabi have been developed including objectives, situations, functions, notions, vocabulary, and grammar among other contents. Research suggests that the acquisition of vocabulary, grammar, discourse rules, etc. is completely useless if the learner can't use them for the notional functional purpose of transmitting and receiving thoughts. This way, structural approaches become insufficient, whereas notional functional and communicative approaches will yield for greater success, because they account for how language is used for effective communication. A notion is a particular context in which people communicate, whereas a function is a specific purpose for a speaker in a given context. Notions are both general and specific. General notions are domains in which we use language to express thought and feeling, whereas specific notions correspond more closely to contexts or situations. This topic is concerned with the linguistic means to express temporal relationships in English. More specifically, the focus shall be on the expression of simultaneity, anteriority and posteriority. A brief note on adverbials. Temporal relationships are formally expressed through adverbials. Adverbials are very common units in the sentence and are mainly characterized by their peripheral nature. They have a wider range of meanings, forms, positions, and grammatical functions than any of the other four clause elements such as subject, verb, object, complement. Syntactically, they are defined by the following four features. The first one, syntactic homonymy, which means that there's a mechanism whereby the same lexical unit may fulfill various syntactic functions. The second one is multiple co-occurrence, which means that more than one adverbial may co-occur within the same sentence. Mobility, the third one, means that adverbials can be placed in more than one position in the same sentence, and fourth position means that the A element may be placed with relative freedom in several positions in the sentence, initial, medial, end of sentence. Anteriority. Anteriority may be realized by adjectives, adverbials, perfect tenses, and ing participle clauses. Now, when it comes to adverbials, still, already, and yet are very closely related in meaning, but their use differs. Still is usually placed in mid-position and is used to say that something is continuing and has not stopped. It is common in affirmative sentences, although it's also possible in questions and negatives. Yet is usually placed at the end of the sentence. It's used to talk about things that are expected to happen and is only used in questions and negative sentences. Last but not least, already is used to suggest that something has happened earlier than expected, or earlier than it might have happened. It's generally used in affirmative sentences, although it might also appear in interrogative sentences if a positive answer is expected. As for its position, it's generally used in mid-position, although it can also be placed at the end of the sentence for emphasis purposes. Now, phased forms are realized by means of the combination of the auxiliary have plus the past participle. Semantically, the function of phased forms is to mark an action, event or state as anterior to a point in time which continues to be relevant in some way. Therefore, the most important contrast between phased and non-phased forms is that, whereas non-phased forms only focus on one point in time, phased forms always imply 2 points of reference, an anterior point where the action took or began or take place, and a posterior point where the action is still relevant. This posterior point will be associated with the present in the case of the present perfect, with the past in the case of the past perfect, and with the future in the case of will have, should have, may have, etc. The phased ing clauses may also express anteriority. However, when the meaning of anteriority is made clear from the context, as happens in some examples, a non-phased ing clause may equally be used. Simultaneity. Simultaneity may be realized by adjectives, adverbials, and progressive aspects in the past. Now, when it comes to adverbials, it's noteworthy to mention that students generally find it difficult to use meanwhile and tend to employ it as a conjunction. Nevertheless, meanwhile is a conjunct, which means that it's placed either at the beginning or at the end of the sentence, always preceded by a pause and followed by a comma, as happens with other conjuncts, such as however, besides, etc. Being back to the progressive aspect in the past, this implies simultaneity of action, and this is typically the case of the past continuous, which implies that two actions are simultaneous. Typical conjunctions in these contexts include while and when. Posteriority. Posteriority may be realized by adjectives, adverbials, and coordinated sentences. Now, regarding the latter, coordinated clauses are sequentially fixed in relation to the previous clause. Therefore, they can't be transposed without producing unacceptable sentences. There is a logical sequence so that the second element has to come after the first. In conclusion, bearing in mind the contents and levels established in the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, the companion volume, and the official curriculum for official language schools, the topic dealt with here is core curriculum material in the teaching and learning of English at official language schools. The expression of simultaneity, posteriority, and anteriority does not seem to pose too many problems for students, and it's generally referred to explicitly when teaching continuous and especially perfect tenses. In notional functional syllabi, notions and functions like the ones covered in this topic are the organizing elements of a curriculum, whereas grammar is attended to only in that it explains the various forms used to accomplish certain functions. Therefore, the functional notional approach offers an alternative to the treatment of linguistic competence. Instead of starting from language forms and their meanings, it starts from a systematic classification of communicative functions and of notions, which are divided into general and specific, and secondarily deals with forms, lexical and grammatical, as their exponents. The attention is thus placed on functional and pragmatic communication. Notional functional syllabi have become popular underpinnings for the development of communicative textbooks. A typical unit would include presentation of dialogues, conversation practice, situations in which the students need to figure out what they should say, etc. The success achieved so far indicates that many practitioners find it more advantageous to go from meaning to form rather than the more traditional practice of organizing progression in purely formal terms. What remains clear, nonetheless, is that a language learner needs to acquire both forms and meanings. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to check out the rest of the topics. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever, and I'll see you in the next one.